Get your paychecks up to 2 days faster with Early Pay. True story. Welcome to Huntington.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of This Week, or The Week That Was. I'm Saeed Khan, joined by some good regulars, even though this week may have been a little bit irregular, but we have former Detroit mayoral chief of staff and PR expert Alexis Wiley. How you doing, Alexis?
I'm good. How you doing? It's sunny outside.
I knew you were going to be kind, and you're kind to the weather as well. We've got Deadline Detroit columnist Greg Bowens.
Hello.
We've got Deadline Detroit columnist Nancy Derringer, and we have Deadline Detroit editor-in-chief Allan Lengel.
Hey, hey.
Every time I see that Huntington commercial, I wish I had taken dance classes. I'm the worst dancer.
Oh, I know, right?
I know.
Pretty cool. Yeah, very cool.
You know, maybe if you open up an account there, instead of a toaster, you can get a free dance lesson. Is Arthur Murray still around?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Commercials. Yeah.
I mean, I really wonder that now that everything is on TikTok and on YouTube, I mean, and with Oculus and VR, I mean, there's a lot of people in their homes going around like this. So
it's until COVID, I was unaware of the pervasiveness and vitality of the Detroit ballroom scene. And since, they were hit very hard because when the disease was spreading and nobody knew about it, they were, dancing cheek to cheek. And, if you were infected, it was a very easy way to get infected or to infect somebody else. But I've looked at some YouTubes of these folks at work, and it's like, man, these are some extremely talented dancers. But sorry to hijack the show.
When I was growing up, at the bar mitzvah scene, they had them at the dance studios. Joe Cornell and Jack Barnes in Oak Park.
Oh, so you could learn how to dance?
People dance. Some people took dance lessons before their bar mitzvah. I didn't. People so they could go on the dance floor and be amazing. So,
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, can they then also, while they're doing that, also like recite Torah so that multitask?
And Kiddush, like George Costanza, But
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Enough stalling for our sixth person to get on. I guess he'll come when he does.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and talk about the big news, which was, of course, yesterday, not for ready primetime television. We had the January 6th House Congressional Subcommittee meeting to go ahead and have a rather unusual setting and something that I think is going to be a predicate for the next few weeks, which is primetime hearings. After what seemed to be a cloak of silence in many of the discussions, now it seems as though the barn door is open with, I believe we have a clip, Allan.
Yes, we have two clips.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr. So I accepted what he was saying.
Yeah,
Jared?
No, just what I've been through. I had three discussions with the president that I can recall. One was on November 23rd, one was on December 1st, and one was on December 14th. And I've been through sort of the give and take of those discussions. And in that context, I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bullshit.
I have never seen a group of journalists so gleeful about using the word bullshit with impunity. It reminds me when I was 4 years old and I learned the word wanker and just wanted to use it all the time. By the way, the first video clip was not Kim Kardashian in her video deposition at the divorce trial with Kanye West. That was favorite first daughter, formerly, Ivanka Trump, who was there. I can see the resemblance being almost uncanny, but it was not a Kardashian.
That was the face of a woman who is really pissed that her husband took the last Xanax and didn't leave enough for her, because that was a double Xanax deposition for sure. So,
well, not only did he take the last Xanax, he was in Saudi Arabia taking it. He decided to avoid DC like the plague.
I cannot watch that clip of Ivanka enough. I mean, with the hair and the contoured cheekbones and all that crap. I mean, just so much makeup. And then, she does the standard, like, I don't know how I'm supposed to answer response of repeating the question back to the guy. It did definitely change my perspective, and then the deer in headlights, and then
well, that's what I was going to say. The last time I saw that look, it was a 6-pointer, and it was 11 o'clock at night. Alexis, what do you did you watch the hearings first of all, or were you watching Fox News?
No, I was not watching Fox News. But me and the baby were sitting upstairs watching it. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched a lot of it. Yeah, I mean, it was awful to see those images. I think it was, I felt for the police as they were talking about what it was like to actually stand there and to be attacked by your own people. I think that has emotional and physical implications for them. So it was that part was really hard to watch. I also kind of felt like, and I don't know if this is the right way to feel or if people are going to think I have an issue with this, but like, I thought it was, important to have this be a primetime hearing, but I also kind of feel like we should do the same thing with some of the gun control laws that are happening. Like, I really am not more concerned, but like that impacts my life going forward. What these psychos did does not impact my life moving forward. I mean, I think they should all get in trouble. Whatever needs to happen. But I'm really concerned about what is safe. And why is that not prime time? Like, that was all I kept thinking was when those parents, Matthew McConaughey, everybody, when they came out and were talking about, holding a little girl's shoe, like that wasn't prime time. Why don't we figure out how to do that? I'm sorry. I know it's like not necessarily a popular opinion because I'm supposed to be super, focused on what happened on January 6th, but I just feel like we need to know what happened moving forward.
You expect these people to work at night? Come on. You're elected representatives.
I think I was watching CNN afterwards, and Carl Bernstein was just saying how outrageous it is that a president was trying to take over the Justice Department, was trying to, do so much to subvert the whole election. And, some people say, you watch Fox, and I watched a little bit of Fox. I switched over, and they're like, Sean Hannity's like, this is ridiculous. They're blowing this out. The big thing is, why was the National Guard there? If the National Guard had been there, this would have never happened. They're not. It's bigger than the security thing. They've addressed the security thing in previous hearings. And it's really about a conspiracy at the highest levels of government to try to overthrow an election. I was telling Nancy, we should see a picture of Trump live in a cage like they do in foreign countries in the courtroom. He should be in a cage, locked up and on trial. It's just insane. There should just be like dozens and dozens of people locked up in those cages for the conspiracy, like I say, at the highest levels of government.
Well, better than that,
Allan,
a red light district of Amsterdam, Allan. I don't even want to go there. But Greg, I think there was a real concern that last night could have been a bit of kabuki theater, that there could have been a lot of grandstanding. Playing to the camera, playing to the bases, playing to potential donors. After all, Liz Cheney is, I think, 20 points behind in the primaries in Wyoming. She's really up the junction there. And it wasn't any of those things. It seemed as though it was very measured, very methodical. Of course, this was the first of several hearings to come in prime time. But if it is to set an agenda and a tone, I think it's promising. What did you find about the proceedings yesterday?
I found a couple of things that I thought were really important, particularly when I would switch over to the upside down world of Fox News. And one of them being just picking up where you left off, Allan, where that guy was talking about why wasn't the National Guard there? Well, they weren't there because them not being there was part of the conspiracy. And those kind of things become really important. I feel you, Alexis, when you say, why aren't these other things on prime time? We're in a 24-hour news cycle. Virtually everything is prime time. It's only us old people that make it seem like that 8 o'clock is like such a big deal. It's on at 8. Oh my God, that's prime time. You could wake up at 6 and it's prime time for you whenever you hit the button.
Hey, Greg, I don't call you names, man. If I'm out at 8 o'clock on the couch, that's my life.
Wait a minute.
Well, that
I
would
was
be sleepy
promised
time for you.
This,
Sleepy
the
time.
This Is Us finale.
I know, right? But what I do appreciate about this in particular is that it at least shows that we are trying to have a level of gravitas and seriousness about the things that have gone on as it relates to January 6th. And I want it to happen. They could do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't matter.
Who's got a bird in the background?
I think, yes, those are the birds outside. I don't know. The birds are very active around here.
Wow. Okay.
We live in Grosse Pointe. It's like Eden, Well,
it's because I got rid of the cat.
Right.
We're
lucky to see
I need to put a
here
bird
in
feeder out
Detroit.
there so the hawks will come back.
In Detroit, we're lucky to see pigeons. The pigeons
I'm afraid they'll get my little dog, though. Little Coco will be hawk food.
Oh, he's so cute.
Well, Allan, don't you ever see the odd pheasant around Detroit? I mean, they're like patrolling.
Yeah, out in the fields occasionally.
No, I'm talking about down on Milwaukee and Woodward.
Oh,
there are coyotes in the
have not
Dakota
seen.
Cut.
They sound like demented.
I saw a mother and baby deer the other day.
Really?
Wow. Yeah.
In Detroit or in
Detroit?
Really?
Yeah.
Did it look anything like Ivanka?
You're in the headlights. I like that.
Well, what about?
This is what I'm talking about here. We have this very serious situation where we're trying to defend democracy, uphold our democracy. We were looking at an investigation and talking about what happened during an attempted coup, and we can't stay on that because we got to crack jokes.
We'll
that's because we're not
reflective of the American.
Greg.
You have to find some humor. You have to find some humor in it because it's just so absurd. It's out of Saturday Night Live. It's so surreal.
And that's why none of us. That's why none of us are going to make prime time, Greg. So, but
it's reflective of our society. We don't have the bandwidth to take this as serious. Now, if this was back in the olden days and people had tried to overthrow the king, it would be like a 2-day trial or not even that. And they just march them out into the courtyard and start shooting people or drawing and quartering them. Forget all that
good old days.
Testimony and drama. You know what happens. But I think that this is reflective of who we are. Unless we see the drama of a bloody coup, then we're not really, that engaged. And going back to what Alexis said earlier, all of us watched, what happened at that school shooting and stuff like that. And even last night, again, the videos of my man being shot by the cop because he had got arraigned or charged were playing all over again. So something is almost fundamentally broken, I think, with us when we cannot rise to the occasion that the seriousness of the issues that we're dealing with calls for. And I get it. I mean, I crack jokes with the rest of us, but this is par for the course for us. And I think that at the end of the day, we're probably doomed because of it.
There was another mass shooting yesterday in Maryland. Just to put that out there. So yeah, Allan.
I was going to say that this thing. The problem is that I'm watching last night, and I'm like seeing William Barr, and I'm seeing Ivanka, and I'm like yes, and about half the country is saying yes, and the other half is like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. That was so yesterday. And people will say to me, they'll say, oh, Trump is gone. Why are you still talking about Trump? Trump is very much present in the Republican Party. He's still a danger to democracy. I don't think we've ever had a president. I mean, Nixon did a lot of bullshit with the Justice Department. He went shopping for the right person to head the Justice Department, the FBI, but we've never have seen it to this level. I mean, Nixon was doing it covertly, hoping no one would find out. Trump was doing it overtly, and thinking it was okay, and a lot of his followers were saying yes. This
And
is
when
okay.
when Nixon was rejected by the American people and resigned, he had the taste and breeding to actually go away. Whereas I mean, Trump he's when's his next rally? Is he going to endorse somebody for the 23rd Senate district? And so.
But one question I have though, we said Trump's a danger. Trump's so bad. Blah blah blah. What's going to come out of this? Like, is he going to be charged with something, or are we going to just talk and spend time being like, he's so bad, and then he has a rally? Like, that's what
I think.
Why are we spending time on all of this if it's not going to lead to any substantive anything?
Well, I think it needs to, and I think that's why we need to spend time on this, because we need to keep beating the drum till the Justice Department steps up. I mean, this guy is a criminal enterprise. He's a RICO conspiracy. And the fact, if we don't talk about it, it goes away. And I think it's really important that we keep it out there.
Can I just say one thing? I think that, as far as drama goes, this was what do you call it? This is an ongoing investigation. But I do want to, and I can't even remember her name now, I do want to give some credit for drama to, who was the House member who made the case for the second impeachment? And that was thrown together pretty quickly. The woman who had the cape, she was so beautiful, this tall black woman with the cape. I can't remember which one
was she from the U.S. Virgin Islands?
Yeah, that was her.
Yeah.
That was her. She's from the Virgin Islands. She did a great job on that, laying out the case at a time when we really didn't know much at all. I mean, we knew what had happened, but we didn't know how deep the planning and the conspiracy went. So, let's give her that.
I believe
and,
that.
I got to say, when that woman officer was testifying, we had never seen a woman officer, testifying about what happened to her. I was thinking that this is the Fox News nightmare. Tall, white, blonde woman standing up there talking about how she got, run over and, knocked unconscious by this protest that was so loving and peaceful.
It's just like another tourist visit, So.
Right. That was compelling.
In a different dimension, she would have been Laura Ingram's spirit animal.
But can you imagine going on a tour of the Capitol, and at some point you say to the tour guide, when do we get to start smashing windows?
Can we fuck some shit up now?
When do we get to tip Nancy Pelosi's desk over? We want a real tour.
Well, first you have to wear the horns. But what one thing? Let's go around. What one thing yesterday do you think surprised you the most in what you heard or what you saw?
Which way are you going?
Anyone, jump in.
Okay. Ivanka giving up her dad. That was. I mean, that for me was
good shit.
It was not porn, but it was real close. So.
Yeah. Alexis. I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
She got muted somehow.
Sorry. No, I muted myself. I was like, I'm like used to these Zoom calls where I always mute myself. No, I think that it wasn't surprising. I didn't find anything surprising. I mean, I did think it was interesting that everyone has now flipped on him, because they're very clear, like, we are not going down with this ship. So you even saw that Betsy DeVos piece that Ingrid Jocks did, where she came out and was like, yeah, I wasn't there for that either. So that was interesting, but none of it's really surprising.
Yeah,
I think she spent most of her time in the administration on a yacht, but okay. Allan?
Even though I've heard William Barr talk before, I found it interesting and still disturbing, the swagger that guy had, saying, I told Trump, it's bullshit. And here was a guy who was such an enabler through so much of the administration, who let that guy get away. He took the Mueller report immediately and twisted it around and degraded it and did everything to allow that criminal to continue as a criminal enterprise. And finally, when he saw there was no boundary to it, he finally said, uh-oh, this is really, really bad. And then suddenly he's trying to portray himself as a good guy. And I find that really, really disturbing. But when you see him talking like that and just being like, I was a justice guy and I told him this is bullshit, I found that very disturbing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some of the comments we're getting from our audience is saying that, I mean, and it's true, I think some people still don't believe it. And that's what I'm wondering. I mean, was there a moment that, Alexis, I mean, you said, I mean, nothing really surprised me. Greg, I mean, was there something shocking for you? I mean, we could say that at this point, anything's possible, but was there something that really caught you off guard?
The testimony of the woman police officer caught me off guard. I wasn't prepared for that, hadn't seen it before. To be honest with you, I didn't even know that there were women who were serving in the Capitol Police who were part of, trying to push back the insurrectionists and the rioters, because we just hadn't seen it. I can think of 4 or 5 guys that I've seen up there testifying about the injuries they suffered and things of that nature. So that was surprising. The other thing that I thought was kind of surprising was who's the guy, the chubby dude that was there first? He was talking through the mask. You used to see him all the time on there. I mean, the number of people, as Alexis pointed out, who were just flipping and talking, because I was under the impression that really none of them were cooperating. They would all act like they were cooperating, then not do it. And it's like, okay, whatever, charge me. And that hasn't happened yet. So, and the other one was the documentary guy, this British documentary guy who was embedded with the Proud Boys, up there talking. I wasn't like, I was kind of surprised to see him like, who's this guy?
Well, that made it official and legitimate, because anything with a British accent has more credibility than anything we can provide. So,
I agree with Greg. I agree with Greg. The surprise is that there was truth being spoken by those, people that we portrayed as kind of evil, that they were actually telling the truth. I think we just assumed they were obfuscating, that they were just not, they were bullshitting the whole time. And I think there was more candidness than
Candor.
Candor.
The word, yes.
Except Jared Kushner.
Thank God for Nancy.
Like
Oh, Jared Kushner. Yeah, he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to listen to this guy whine about an insurrection. I was trying to like dole out pardons to all of my.
Right.
My
I was concerned about the serious stuff.
Crap sons. God, this fellow colonial.
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he joins that Saudi golf league. I was actually, I shouldn't be surprised, but the revelation of the Congress people that were trying to hit up Trump for a pardon, that kind of really smacked me in the face. And they mentioned Congressman Perry, but I mean, I think we can speculate what Getz, Jordan,
Jim Jordan, for sure,
some of them I think definitely will. Well, we have something a little bit closer to home that relates to the January 6th incident, insurrection, chaos, sedition. And that is GOP gubernatorial candidate and current front-runner Ryan Kelly. Seemed as though he had a visit from the FBI who came to his home and actually arrested him in relation to his visit to the U.S. Capitol on January the 6th. Apparently, he wasn't there on the tour, but he jumped right on in with everyone else, allegedly. What are we to make of this? I mean, here he's clearly clapping back and saying, oh, it's the timing. It is all rubbish. Obviously, he's trying to CYA. Is this going to impact an already troubled Republican ticket for governor? And is Kevin Rinke just dancing with the zombies?
Oh, my God. I would say, first of all, you see some of the photos, and it may have taken, he was wearing a baseball cap backward, and it probably took a long time to identify him. There were so many people out there. And the thing is, the guy is a clown. He's trying to use this now. He's going to use this as a badge of honor that I was arrested by the abusive FBI, that I was at January 6th supporting the insurrection. He's hoping that that'll benefit his campaign, but he's a clown, much like Kevin Rinke is even a bigger clown. It's really, I mean, and the fact that we have now Chief Craig, who has now announced that he's going to be a writing candidate. I mean, Gretchen Whitmer must be going, oh my gosh, stop spending any more money on anything. We won.
Well, I can't be quite
Yeah.
I can't be quite as sanguine about that, because I think there's a very good chance any of these people could end up beating her. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. It's like November is months away.
Not with with 2 Republican candidates running, I think.
Well, but Craig is running as a write-in for the nomination. I mean, if he doesn't get the nomination, I don't think he's going to try to split the vote and run just as a write-in for that. So I mean, it's going to be Gretchen Whitmer versus TBD. But what I find so horrifying about this is, yes, he's going to fundraise off of this, and yes, it's going to boost his profile, and yes, it's probably going to boost his position for the nomination, which is horrifying. I mean, this is the guy, remember, who in either January or February was doing a Meet the Candidates thing with one of the other lunatics, I think it's Garrett Soldano, and told people that they should pay attention in their polling places, and if they saw something they didn't like, go over to the tabulator and yank the cord out of the wall. I mean, that is, I don't think that might be felony. I mean, that gets you arrested. Exactly. I mean, you know, I was a poll worker. I'm going to be a poll worker again. And he, you know, it's, if somebody came at my tabulator with that, I'd be like, you know, but the point is, these guys are so deep into this, dare I say, swamp of bullshit in their brains, they actually believe all this stuff. I mean, you know, and he's got to get better at criming too, because the guy didn't even have enough sense to get rid of the clothes that he wore that day. I mean, otherwise he'd just be another guy, another white man in aviator shades. But, you know, he wore the same Apple Watch band, he wore the same coat, he wore the same hat. So there you go.
Well, you know, some of those things haven't exactly gone out of style yet, Nancy. I mean, that's coming in the fall collection. So.
The insurrection catalog.
How many times? I mean, we've all seen, you know, this kind of show a couple times, and it's almost par for the course when some, you know, politician, particularly on the right, will get popped for something, you know, stealing on the public dime, you know, some kind of thing going on. They'll always say, "Well, this is all politics." You know,
what are we doing here? Aren't we doing? I mean,
there's so many. Yeah,
Isn't that what this is?
That's what I love. I love them saying, "Wait a minute, they're playing politics into all this stuff." It's like, it is, as Nancy, it's all politics.
It's all politics. You're running for a political.
I think, though, to be completely honest, I think that when we actually look at, like, there's one thing of like being part of the insurrection and the guy in the hat. It's another thing when the FBI comes and takes you away and arrests you. And I really think that Michigan, whether you're Republican, Democrat, whatever, they don't have a really good high tolerance for like people who are like criminals, right? It's the same reason when people say, oh, Kwame Kilpatrick could come back and run in Detroit and win. No, he actually couldn't, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, this is going to tank him. And I think that you're going to see Kevin Rinke kind of come up a little bit. And then I think you're going to see Tudor Dixon swoop in, and it's going to be Tudor Dixon versus Governor Whitmer.
I think so too. Yep. But it is, I do think in the short term, it's going to raise Ryan Kelly's profile. And, you know, yeah.
He's already in the last poll that we ran by Target Insight, he was the #1 person. But a lot of that was because people didn't know who he was, but they know the name Kelly in Michigan politics.
Right.
That's a popular name. So.
And
and his claim to fame, his last name.
Things, you know, name familiarity.
Yeah. Well,
someday I want to be contacted by a pollster and so that I can play that dumb. I mean, if I didn't know who the guy was, I'd just say, I don't know who he is. I wouldn't say, oh, Kelly, that sounds.
Kelly, that's my man.
It's like the secret to the Hathaways ending up being elected to everything in the courts. So anyway,
I think the really good ones, Nancy, ask for your social security number. So you might want to watch out for that.
Well, you know what? I mean, really, what else does this guy have? He doesn't have a whole lot of money. And you know, I mean, at least he got his signatures in. Mm-hmm. So I mean, this is the only thing that can, you know, boost him. And you know, let's say, how long, Allan, you're the courts guy, how long would it take for him to go through the process of of being charged and then having a trial. What do you think? Like a year?
It depends. You could drag it out. I mean, there's ways that you could do it very expeditiously and just say, okay, let's get a plea, give us a good deal, probation, whatever. Or you could just say, hey, we want, discovery. We need more time for discovery. And they could certainly push it past the election. I mean, there's so many cases that they're prosecuting and they can only process so many. So, or you ask for a trial and then they say, we want a trial, and that's going to be a whole other thing. And they're like, we don't have time right now for a trial. We've got to push the rest of these cases through. So he could delay it, certainly past the election, but it's a matter of, does he want, I don't know. He could plead no contest and whatever. I don't know.
But if he wants to play the victim of, big government is coming down on me because I was standing up for our rights and blah, 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 and I didn't hurt nobody, he can conceivably run this through certainly the primary.
Yeah.
And maybe through.
The only thing that makes this different is it's the FBI, right? Like, it's the FBI. It's not the AG. It's not like there's no connection to an elected official. It's the FBI that has come to take you away.
But isn't it going to be framed as Biden's FBI?
If people, I think that we should give them at least a hair more credit that they will not say it's Biden's FBI. Because everybody, it's the FBI. It's just like, yeah, you're done. You're done. The FBI is taking you.
Are you sure about that around here? The FBI stood on the steps of the outside the federal building downtown, and announced they were investigating two council members. Yeah. Right before the election. I mean, that's
and the one
usually wasn't done before.
And voters who if you'd
they booted one, but kept the other.
Then candidate Trump, of all of his many, many sound bites, the one that always struck me was when he said, what do you got to lose as far as this plea to go ahead and vote for him? Is that really where we are as a country, that you've got both candidates and their supporters who are at this point of saying, what do we got to lose? We're going to go ahead and vote for these people who clearly are not qualified, are even criminals. But the idea that they find it to be perfectly acceptable to be in the abyss.
I think the quality of candidates, although look, Jesse Ventura got elected as governor.
The body.
Yes. But now it seems like the Matt Gaetzes, the Marjorie Taylor Greens are getting elected, and not only being elected, but they're becoming the face of the party. And the party is becoming the crazy party, as opposed to, you see Cheney last night, where you're like, I don't agree with, she's a bona fide conservative in a lot of things, and I don't agree with a lot of stuff, but I admire her for the stand she's taken and the integrity. But she is in such a minority in that party that Kevin McCarthy, he said, this is ridiculous. This whole committee is a farce. Why are we doing it? And then they play early on, right after the insurrection, where he says, we need to get to the bottom of this. We can't brush it aside. We have to figure out. And so there's very little integrity left. But,
well, on January the 6th, he was sucking his thumb, holding a blanket under somebody's desk in the in the Capitol.
Right.
But that speaking of Marjorie Taylor Greene, she hired as an intern Milo Yiannopoulos to come to Washington and basically be her advisor on issues. So yeah, stay tuned for the crazy there. Ryan,
isn't Milo Yiannopoulos Australian? Does he even have American citizenship? I don't think he does.
Well, maybe that's what's keeping him in the country. So,
whatever.
Who knows?
I'll ask Professor Google.
so Ryan Kelly's from the west side of the state, from Allendale, and of course we have other news coming from that area as well. Yesterday, the Grand Rapids prosecutor charged Officer Christopher Schur, with second-degree murder in the killing of Patrick Lyoya, a case which, of course, got not only local but national and international News, in large part because of the body cam video, which was quite graphic. His attorneys have, of course, declared that he will be cleared at trial. Are you surprised by both the decision by the prosecutor, the actual charge, and where do you see the case going?
I wasn't surprised at all. I thought it was so egregious, the shooting there, that look, the Loyola violated the law. He was breaking the law. He was doing all, running, resisting and stuff like that. But still, police officers deal with people breaking the law a lot of times. And if we let them shoot people like that, we'd have dead bodies every day. We'd have executions every day. It'd be like a third world country there. It was so egregious. I mean, there were so many options for him to avoid that, and I think at every cost, an officer should try to avoid it until they just can't, until it's just their life is in danger. And I don't think, I mean, he may have felt threatened at some point, but he could have stepped off, pulled the gun on him, and said, "Okay." But what he did was, it was like killing an animal. I mean, like you would see just somebody take their dog out in the yard and just shoot it, and I don't know. So I wasn't surprised at all.
Okay. Anyone else thoughts about where the case is going? What about this idea that, I mean, one of the points that the defense will raise is that Schur was just simply following department policy, that this was exactly standard operating procedure. He was going by the book.
Until the end.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think that's standard procedure right at the end, where you put a bullet in a guy's head after you've jumped on top of him. I think maybe up till then, trying to restrain him, although, there are a lot of officers. In fact, I read Todd, who's watching right now, is we've done interviews with him where he's talked about that he wouldn't have chased the guy. He would have just called the radio and had his car towed, and his friend was sitting in the passenger seat. I mean, there were just so many options. And then even when he chased him, he could have gotten up and not, I mean, what he did was just, in the end, it was like the guy just lost his, I'm sure he looks back a million times and says, why did I do that? But he did it. And that's unfortunate. That's why it's second-degree murder instead of first-degree murder. I mean, it was, something. So
second-degree murder is wanton and willful disregard for human life, depraved heart, motivation for murder. I mean, the fact that it wasn't premeditated may just simply happen because it was so quick.
Right.
But still quite egregious. So yeah, I mean,
I think one thing that's interesting to watch, will be interesting to watch. One, yeah, the charging decision is one thing. The question is going to be, what will a West Michigan jury do?
That's exactly what I would have said. So
yeah,
thanks for saying it. Yeah,
going to be fascinating to watch, because I don't think it's a slam dunk. With yes, the facts make it should be a slam dunk that he's straight up guilty. But I think West Michigan, we don't know what's going to come out of there.
But if you watch that video, it is so shocking and disturbing that I think
we just saw a jury in Virginia give Johnny Depp $10 million for being defamed in a piece that he wasn't even named in. I don't trust juries. They do all kinds of wacky stuff. And I think what Alexis says is dead on. This is West Michigan. It's not Detroit. And, they're going to have a multiracial, jury pool, and they're going to have at least some black folks on the jury. But it's not a slam dunk at all.
All it takes is one to be the
never, no case is ever a slam dunk.
I know.
It's rarely the case. But as you say, there's always a wild card there. There's always, I saw a case in 1989 where a judge, Leon Jenkins, a 36th District Court judge, he was on video saying, the party store owner said, okay, here's $175 for this ticket, here's $150. And the judge instructed the jury, said, you cannot consider entrapment for a judge. He knows the law, you can't consider it. And they basically considered it, and they acquitted him. So
What were you
Well,
saying,
that was Detroit, or
Yeah.
you know.
What were you going to say, Greg?
No, I was just going to say that I'm certainly happy with the charge. I'm glad it happened, that they had enough evidence. I don't see how they could have gotten around not charging him. And in some ways, it does, I believe, restore or shore up people's faith in the system, because we saw the guy in Minneapolis, get charged and go to jail. And so it's not like I remember things being where, it was kind of iffy as to whether or not the cop would get charged, in these kind of cases. I think we're seeing more and more and more, and we can take it as a matter of course that you can expect for the cop to be charged.
So, I'm glad you raised Minneapolis, Greg, because with the George Floyd case, there was the suffocation of a man. Here you have, as Allan said, a really graphic video of somebody being shot in the head who's on his stomach. I suspect that the prosecutor is going to invoke George Floyd. At least a good prosecutor would, because that seems to be the kind of imagery that would move a jury.
I think, it's interesting. I read Todd here, who's made a little comment, who was with the police department for 35 years. He said, I predict he'll be convicted of a lesser charge of manslaughter. Mark my word. And I think there's always some sympathy for the cop to say, look, they're going to bring up and say, look, the guy was resisting. He was running away. He was drunk. He was, this or that. He was
trying to get a hold of the taser. Yeah.
Right. Trying to steal the taser away. What would you have done? You would have been fearful. And I'm sure there's going to be that. And so it would be hard to acquit on that when you see the end result. But maybe, Ira could be right that they reduce it to a manslaughter.
This is why one of the things that the NRA blocked, which actually makes sense that they should have this, is the technology now of having your handprint on the gun, so that even if somebody reaches for it, you can be the only one holding the gun.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to see more about that, James Bond Skyfall, Act 2, Scene 3, that was also there. But Nancy, you mentioned, I don't know why, but I'm glad you did, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial.
Yes.
So he went out in Birmingham, England with Jeff Beck, because apparently they're jamming together out there. And he spent $60,000 at a Pakistani restaurant.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know Pakistani food was that expensive.
Well, my mom said, who spends $60,000 on Pakistani food? I said, the entire country of Pakistan. She wasn't amused. And I think part of that is because she realizes that she's been shortchanged her entire life. But the food in Birmingham is really excellent. Well, no, what ended up happening was they rented out the entire restaurant, and they had to cancel 240 reservations that were already there. Right. And Depp's team compensated everybody for.
Right. I was just going to say they had to have picked up multiple checks, and then they did, and maybe from all the other Pakistani restaurants around there too, because
that area is known as the Balti Triangle, and there are like 55 restaurants in that area. So wow. I'm sure those 240 people probably shrugged their shoulders and said, "We're either going next door, or wait for it, going home for Pakistani food."
You know what my mother would have said when she saw the bill? Do you know how many meals we could have had at home for this?
That's what moms do.
That's what Pakistani moms do too. That's why
Alexis, you better start taking notes.
Yeah, because baby's gonna start coming for you.
Yeah.
So here's a story from Allan's old stomping grounds. Trouble at the Washington Post. A lot of issues going on with social media, with tweets, with suspensions. One involved a now former Washington Post employee by the name of Felicia Sonmezz, who was just fired yesterday. Apparently, I think it was Eric Weigel had retweeted a post, which was, I think by all means, fairly insensitive. And
sexist joke. Yeah, he retweeted a sexist joke.
And she raised hackles about that, which then seems led to Eric Weigel's suspension without pay. She herself had been suspended with pay for some tweeting at an earlier spot. She also had a lawsuit against the Washington Post for alleged harassment. And apparently she claimed that the Washington Post did not allow her to cover a story because she would not have been objective about it. Well, apparently the Twitter storm going back and forth involving her culminated in the WAPO finally letting her go. Is there an issue between conventional journalism and the freewheeling area known as social media?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I would say yes. And I speak as somebody who is at the end of her career and works for Allan Lengel, who has no social media policy. So I pretty much tweet whatever I want.
Wow.
But here's
let me clarify. If there was
okay, you
something
can
really
clarify when
over
it's
the
your
line.
turn. Okay, all right, hold on. Yes, you're right. There's a lot.
I think that
Even
career is
for
about to get
dancing.
shorter, Nancy.
But as far as Felicia Sonmezz goes, number one, I think she absolutely had a legitimate beef against the Washington Post, because here was the situation where she was not allowed to cover. She has been a victim of sexual assault, like many women. She has written about it, and they would not allow her to cover a story with sexual assault at the center of it because they said she could not be objective. Now, unless they're applying that to every reporter who's ever had a bad experience with X being able to, report objectively about X, then they've got to cast a much wider net than just her. So I'd say in her favor, she does have that going for her. However, having worked in newsrooms, I have been astonished more than once at how a happy, cohesive, well-meshed staff can be poisoned by one malcontent. And it's amazing. I mean, I've worked for large newspaper, small newspaper, dying newspaper, websites, and it's remarkable. If one person with a bad attitude can really one bad apple really can spoil a bunch. So
But
I can see why they get rid of her.
I just want to say
the ground
this.
has to be fertile enough for that bad apple to grow, for it to spread. I mean, if otherwise they just look like a loon.
Everybody complains about their job. Everybody. I'm sorry. What?
Sorry, not a thing from a business perspective. You cannot have someone in the workplace who is toxic and creating a bad environment for others. Like, you got to cut them off you got to get rid of them. You can't let them linger.
What if they're the boss?
And the thing is, we
normally
all
it's the
complain
boss
about our jobs. We all do it. We all do it. Everybody does it. But you have to know what the line is between saying, this is a bad decision. This was a, terrible, place to work today, and becoming the kind of chronic complainer that ends up, pissing in the whiskey.
I just want to say that from this point on, I want to make an announcement that anyone who tweets for Deadline Detroit, I have to approve the tweet. Okay? How's that for our
They love
policy?
Deadline Detroit in every.
That's it, Saeed. I'm forming a union.
But it's true, though.
Greg,
Allan lingo.
The values.
Does this look like Starbucks to you?
Yeah, the values and what succeeds in social media is passion, point of view, a face, a brand, a personality. But those are many of the things that editors don't want you to show at all in your work. I mean, it's Alexis, you've worked in TV. Have you ever worked in print before?
Never in print.
Okay. And I mean, in TV, the line is smudgier because your face is up there and you're talking and you have to be pretty and you have to be well made up and all that other stuff. But it's the same, and so the same thing that makes Dave Weigel, laugh at a off-color joke about women, that it can cheese off your colleagues.
Well, and not even that was
what?
Kind of like how is it we've not, like, there's not been a lot of attention on what he actually said. Like, what he retweeted was really sexist about women being like, you're either bisexual or bipolar.
No,
like,
he said all women are bi. It's your
Right.
job to find out whether it's sexual or polar.
Wow.
and
You know
that's
what?
Did it say that?
That's the joke.
you're supposed to be, you represent your company, right? You represent the Washington Post. You should have used better judgment from tweeting that, right?
Yeah.
Now, what I think the thing about Felicia, it seems like, is she has a history of being a bad actor and is deeply disliked, because I don't think her getting upset is anything different than what we saw. I mean, this kind of thing happened in the New York Times.
Right.
They outed a number of people over insensitive comments that they felt like drove a culture in the newsroom.
Right.
This is surprising to me that everyone turned on her so quick. I mean, there must be a lot more to it. And I don't know.
Yeah, she got and Weigel got suspended for a full month without pay, which seems like overkill. The other thing about Twitter, I just want to make one more point, and then Allan, go ahead, is that it's not only, I mean, it's not just a place that we screw around between phone calls. It really can drive a person with a big Twitter following can drive a lot of traffic, which is to the paper or the news organization, which is very important.
She has 108,500 followers.
Right.
How much of this is generational, though? I mean,
well, I have a point
Okay.
addressing that generational thing. Is that when I got to the Post in '97, they were so uptight about, we would go on TV, people would go on MSNBC or whatever, CNN, but they were so uptight about you like veering outside of your straight news kind of thing. But and they somewhat discouraged you from going on TV. I covered the Chandra Levy thing. They were so afraid. I was getting requests every day, go on the Larry King show on this. They were so afraid that I would say something that might create a lawsuit for them that I never went on. And literally daily I would get, every station was calling me up. And by the time I left, they had built a TV studio in the newsroom. They had a booker, and they were trying to get people on as much as they could. Social media, when I left the Post in 2008, somebody told me, you need to go on Facebook. And then I did. And someone wrote me right away and said, you need a picture. You have to put your picture on there. And so, and then LinkedIn, somebody said, you have to have a LinkedIn page. You have to have a presence in social media. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, at the Detroit News, I was would do investigative stuff. You didn't even want your name listed in the phone book. You wanted to keep as low profile as you could. And so things have changed so much in like the last 20 years in media. So when Trump got elected, I would see people like Peter Baker at the New York Times and stuff. They'd say, well, I think the president, what he's saying is not exactly true. And after a while, they were just like, this guy's a liar. He's lying. It keeps shifting, and so how far the line goes, and what you can say on social media is becoming more and more blurred.
Yeah, true.
So do you think Felicia will get hired by Barry Weiss?
I bet those two hate each other. Yeah, they come from different poles. By the way, Dave Weigel has 603,000 followers.
Wow.
So, ooh, there we go.
So obviously people like the joke.
And jokes on them.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, we are at that time of the show where Allan. It is also Putts of the Week or Kindness Galore of the Week, depending on one's perspective.
You did that just for me. Is that right?
What's that?
We're doing that for you.
If I only did it for you, it would not be a lost cause. So glad to do it. Greg, we'll start with you because you've got somebody in mind. I can tell. Maybe not.
Come back to me.
Okay, I will. Alexis.
Oh, okay. You should.
I've got a backup schmuck. I've got a backup schmuck if you don't want to utilize your own.
Okay, I may change my mind, but you can give a backup schmuck now, and then I'll give one if I'm going to come up with something. Just give me 2 seconds.
All right. I got Nancy.
Okay, Allan. One of you. Allan, Nancy.
Go ahead.
Okay. I had so many candidates this week. I've got a list here in my planner, but I'm going with one that's a little far afield. And I'm naming Carl Palladino my schmuck of the week. He is a New Yorker. He was the GOP nominee for governor in 2010. He is currently running for the 23rd district, congressional district. He's a very active, high-profile Republican who has, since the dawn of the Obama era, when he burst onto the national scene by being that guy who always forwards you the email that shows Obama sitting in a watermelon patch with a bone through his nose, just this really vile, racist crap. And what you would think would be a bad move for a New Yorker, he's branching out into anti-Semitism. And this week, I believe we discovered that he recently gave an interview where he said the kind of leader that we need is Adolf Hitler. So
nice. Right.
Nice.
I miss those days of Hitler.
You'd think a man who is pushing 80 would have learned that lesson by now, but
right.
No.
Not a good look.
There you go.
And he's been endorsed by Elise Stefanik, who's the number 3 in charge in the House on the GOP side.
He has. Yeah. He's terrible. Anyway.
Okay. All right. Allan.
My schmuck of the week is James Craig. I think he's a decent guy, but he's a schmuck. I mean, he is whining. He screwed up. His campaign got messed up by these. I mean, besides that, his campaign has had a lot of very bumpy, a lot of bumps in it. He is blaming everyone but himself. And if he would just own up to it and just say, hey, I screwed up here, but I'm not giving up. Instead, it's like, oh, I'm a victim and they're going after me and they're doing me wrong and stuff like that. I think it's so disgraceful that a grown man can't stand up and admit responsibility for screwing up. So
you could at least say I hired the wrong political consultant.
Right.
Should have hired Alexis.
I just noticed some.
I don't do that.
I just noticed some white smoke appearing from the Deadline Detroit chimney, which means Alexis has somebody.
I have a spot now, okay? Because you brought up Craig. I'm going to throw in Perry Johnson because I find it hilarious that the quality guru did not have quality signatures.
Yes.
Do you attribute that to the decline in cursive writing, Alexis? I think they're related.
I attribute it to the fact that they both had the same consultant who some people have said some folks. So I don't know much about it, but I'm just saying there was some stuff in the game on all that.
Okay, Greg, come on, man.
Yeah, to be honest, I searched sort of far and wide, and there are always people that can make it. It was kind of a toss-up for me with the Isabella County Sheriff's Office, who are whining about, having to pay for gas. Gas prices are going up, and they're not going to be able to go on patrol. It's like, come on, man. What are you talking about?
Get on a bicycle.
Right, exactly. You got too many fat cops.
Walk.
Bike patrols, man.
Walk the beat, right.
And then that sends, panic throughout, the community and pops out these stories about local governments, running out of money to pay for gas and this, that, and the other. And, I tell you, Nancy, these guys that come around every once a week, not the tree trimmers, but the tree cruncher guys.
Oh, yeah, the chippers. Yeah.
The wood chippers.
And they're so doggone loud. And they run that thing. It's burning on gas. They run that thing the whole day. So they could be driving down Jefferson with the stupid tree trimmer thingy on full blast. Wood chipper. Right. It's totally annoying and is a waste of gas and is an example of how many local governments aren't, being fiscally responsible when they let the tree trimmer guy, the chipper guy
Greg Bowens for mayor. He'll put an end to the chipper abuse.
Chipper, this damn annoying chipper is so loud.
You know what I have learned?
Like an old man
in
the corner house. Get off my lawn.
I've learned living in Grosse Pointe that you should not complain about that stuff, because the alternative is what I saw when I was doing census work on the other side of Mack Avenue. And there would be trees that had fallen down years before that are just laying across somebody's backyard. So it's kind of like, but I get you. I hate those things too. It's the gas blowers that drive me crazy.
Damn
chippers.
Alan, I think that after hearing from Greg, I think you need to get the aluminum pole out, and we need to have an airing of grievances for Festivus.
Yes, Festivus for the rest of us.
For the rest of us, yes.
I like that.
Before he starts raining blows on the chipper.
My schmuck was going to be Stephen Breyer, over at the Supreme Court, because they're off on this tangent trying to find the leaker as opposed to getting the work of the court done.
Yeah. Well, they see that as their work, I think.
The term ends in 3 weeks, and there's a distinct possibility that there's going to be a bunch of opinions that just say yes, no, maybe. So
because I don't know how their shoulder as they're running out of time.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to catch up with them. But given the prose that's coming out of the Supreme Court lately, I think that's about as eloquent as they're going to make it. Well, my schmuck of the week is actually, if we wanted to pile on, Carl Palladino said much more than just about Hitler. He also claims that the Buffalo shooting, of which, by the way, he would be representing Buffalo in his congressional district, as well as Uvalde and all, are all part of a grand conspiracy to then lead to gun control. So that's what Palladino also said. But since Nancy's already done that, since we don't pile on, I do have backup schmucks.
Oh, were you going to do Carl too?
I was going to do Carl as well.
Wow. Sorry.
My schmuck of the week is, speaking of all these Seinfeld references, the other Jason Alexander that does not play George Costanza. You might remember him for the very short-lived marriage that he had to none other than Britney Spears, a marriage that lasted 55 hours.
Wow.
Or basically about how long an Imodium pill lasts. Britney was wedding her sweetheart Sam Asghari when she apparently has already gotten married. But Jason decided to crash the wedding and showed up at the Britney home. Luckily, he was charged with trespassing, vandalism, and 2 counts of battery. So Jason Alexander, for trying to wreck Britney with her comeback, you're my schmuck of the week.
What's the language they use in the wedding? If anyone has reason to let him speak now or forever hold his peace. That's all he was trying to do, And also, when you said the Britney home, now I'm imagining a place that looks kind of like Barbie's dream house.
You should watch the video. You can see inside. Like, he goes to the garage. I watched it just because I was like, ooh, what does her hallway look like? Upstairs, there's a plant there and a photo there.
I really miss MTV's Cribs, because I love that show, and I loved, like, when they went into Snoop Dogg's house and he had like all those Olin Mills pictures of all of his cousins, they were so great.
We got to add to the schmuck of the week the Uvalde School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo, who was responsible for that debacle happening at that school, and hasn't, and it's obvious. You don't call the police and leave them in the hallway for an hour while people are shot and bleeding on the floor, and then you can't explain it. I mean, it's.
And now they're trying to keep reporters away from the town, from everything.
I need a better Yiddish word for that. I don't think schmuck is a good one. I need a stronger.
Yeah, Allan, give us a good harsh Yiddish word.
I have to think of something. I'll
Alan,
work on that next week.
Your homework is to consult the I Ching on this one. Nancy, what I miss on MTV is actual videos.
Me too.
Video killed a radio star, but MTV killed the video.
But YouTube, it just basically nailed the coffin shut. So, that's,
it did do that.
Those Vivo videos. Okay.
Well, listen, thank you everybody for being on. Alexis Wiley, Greg Bowens, Nancy Derringer, and last word to Allan.
Drive home safely.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great